John, you're on slides this morning. I wish you well. I point to you, that's the signal. And I'm going to go down here because I almost killed myself up there last time, so we're going to preach from down here. Go ahead and throw up our opening. If it feels a little disconnected this morning, it is. What should have been a very wide open week with lots of time to plan and work things out. We started with a massive extended family crisis on Tuesday. We rolled into 2 days of me routing out my kitchen as it was backed up, eventually having to call in plumbers. And we topped it off on Friday night with floodwaters in our basement that got deep enough that I suggested to Michelle that I might redo a sermon, move to Noah, throw a couple of cats down there on a live stream and go, see, that's what it looked like. And it's coming 2 by 2, right? So I'm a little off this morning. So seriously, best of luck on that. As you can see, title of our message, title of our message this morning is On Earth as It Is in Hell. And obviously, it's a bit of a cheeky play on the Lord's Prayer, which most of you have grown up with in some fashion or another. Often when I have seen this taught before, I have heard it taught as if the disciples are approaching Jesus and going, we just don't even know how to pray in this new kingdom, in this new way. But of course, actually, this is as ancient as it gets for the Jews. And every single line of this text would have been regularly a feature found within Torah. And it would have been very, very common for any disciple to approach any rabbi and say, how do you pray? Teach me how to pray. And it's not as if they've never prayed before. What they want to know is, how are you going to take the ingredients and what are you going to cook? What kind of chili are you coming up with, right? And so Jesus comes up with this particular sequence, and I left it here in KJV because some things are just truly better in KJV, not many, but some. And the Lord's Prayer is one of them, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Somehow the thys really help it out, right? And so Jesus says, listen, if you want to pray, you're going to be praying in such a way that you are going to be orienting yourself around the will of God. Thy will be done, right? Where? On earth as it is in heaven. There's this unspoken acknowledgement at the beginning that we already know God's will is happening in the heavens and it's going down exactly as it should. But part of an essential feature of what it means to pray as a Christian is to pray in such a way that we begin to orient our lives around the will of God. And that we are quite literally trying to bring things as they are in heaven down to here on earth. That we would live in such a fashion that our lives become a reflection of the heavens, right? Of the divine. C.S. Lewis once said that there are two kinds of people in the end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says in the end, thy will be done. And that, of course, brings us to Jonah, right? Because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about a man who hears a clear, distinct call from the divine. And the divine says, hey, those people you can't stand over there, I need you to go over there, and I need you to do a thing, and it's not going to be fun, but that's how that's going down. And Jonah's like, I'm out. I'm not interested in that. I hear your will, but I'm going to go with my will here in this moment, right? My will be done, says Jonah. Now, in order to understand about what I'm going to kind of show you in this text here, I need you to imagine, what do you think of when I ask for you to picture the cosmos? When I ask you to picture creation, right? Most of us probably start, especially Lisa, probably starts here on the left, right? There's trees, there's mountains, there's streams. She can probably say a lot about what those rock formations are like and what they're doing. Maybe someday she will be kind enough to take us on such a trip and teach us these things, right? Maybe some of you of my generation, you start to go, well, let's pull the thing back just a little bit. And maybe your mind goes to that famous photo from the 60s, right? Where for the first time as the Apollo astronauts are coming around the far side of the moon, we actually see the blue and green ball just hovering in this void, right? Or maybe you are the younger generation yet, And your visions of the cosmos will be inspired by things like the James Webb Telescope, where we now turn it out into created order and go, look at that, right? And the pillars of creation, things of this nature. Go for it, John. But in the ancient world, they had a very different picture, a very different map of what creation looked like in their mind. And this isn't distinctly Jewish, although it is absolutely Jewish. This would have characterized everybody in the ancient Near Eastern world, in the Mesopotamian region. This is as old as 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years ago. Start out with an idea that there is land, okay? And underneath the land, you will get the pillars of creation, quite literally holding the land up. And in and around all of these pillars of creation are these vast waters that are deeply, profoundly chaotic. And within those vast waters, there swims a beast, the Leviathan. And the Leviathan is constantly waiting for the land to give way and for you to begin to fall into the waters, into the chaos, where it will consume you. On the land, there are mountains and trees and all the features of creation that we regularly know. But if you'll notice in this little map here, you'll notice that the mountains are kicked over to the sides, and you'll see that it's holding up this arch. And this arch is what we often call the firmament. And this is, quite literally, in their imagination, the heavens, right? The heavens are sustained and they are held up by the mountains of this world. And above the heavens there are, in fact, if you can see there, even more waters, right? So think of Noah's Ark and the story of Noah, right? What happens in Noah's Ark when it all goes under, right? The flood waters of the deep rise, the floodgates of the heavens open up, and water's coming from every direction, and it's chaos and it's death, right? That's the picture that they had. That's the picture that they had. And if you think about it, if the mountain sustains the firmament or the arch, if it's the load-bearing wall in modern vernacular, right? Then if you stop and think about it, there is a place where quite literally heaven and earth meet. And there is a place quite literally where humanity can come into contact with the divine. Mount Moriah. Abraham and Isaac go up to the mountains, sacrifice Isaac, and the divine meets him there, right? Mount Horeb, Moses in the burning bush. Moses walking, and God says, here, do this thing, I've got this for you. Mount Sinai, Moses at the giving of the law. Mount Carmel, Elijah and the prophets of Baal. Mount of Olives, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Mount Tabor, the transfiguration of the Christ. In fact, this theme is so commonly known that one of the earliest stories that we find in Genesis is a story about the Tower of Babel. And what are humanity trying to do? They are quite literally trying to build their own mountain, to get up to the firmament, to find their own way to climb the ladder, as it were. The places where the divine and humanity quite literally touch, intersect, meet, commune, talk. Jonah, right? The story begins, and I'm going to watch. I'm doing something here. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, and he went down to Joppa and found a ship going down to Tarshish. Okay, twice in that passage it says down. Probably not on the screen because I was doing things and sending them to Adrian this morning. But twice it says he's going down. Even to this day, when Jewish people return to the state of Israel, they make what they call aliyah. It is to go up to Israel, and when you leave Israel, it is said that you are going down. Right? He is leaving Israel. He is going down. He is going down. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship, and he had laid down. Right? Go for it. So they picked up Jonah and they hurled him into the sea. And the sea ceased from its raging. What direction do you think you're going if you're tossed into the sea? Down, down, right? Down, down, down. You are going. You are going. The waters closed over me to take my life, Jonah says. The deep surrounded me. The chaos surrounded me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. At the what? At the root of the mountains. At the root of the mountains I went down to the land whose bars closed upon me forever, and yet you brought up my life from the pit. If at the very top, the peak of the mountains, is where humanity and the divine meet, then where do you think you are when you are no longer even on land, but you're still going down until the mountains have reached the very ocean floor? You are quite literally as far from heaven as you could be. What do we call the place that you are when you are as far from heaven as you can be? Jonah has descended to hell, right? Not in some afterlife metaphysical sense, but he has quite literally brought hell to earth. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. My will be done on earth as it is in hell. You see the difference there? Go for it. Maybe some of you recognize this photo. It's one of my favorites. It's taken a shot from Cathedral Pines at Honey Rock Camp, and you're looking out at the bridge that all the canoes go under. Years ago, I'm a sophomore at Wheaton. Much like Jonah, I'm on the run. I had a really great sophomore year at Wheaton, but it culminated in a GPA of 0.83. And Mom and Dad were footing the bill on that. So it was time to run. It was time to go. And so I walked into the Honey Rock offices and I said, what do you have for a lost soul such as myself? And they said, we need a morning head cook. Could you be a head chef? And I'm like, I could be a head chef. And they asked the question, do you know how to cook? Well, I know how to cook. I think so. Didn't take them long. I was demoted rather quickly that summer. But I went up, because as a head chef, I went up before a lot of the other staff did. And we're moving the winter kitchen over to the summer kitchen, all the gear. And I'm enough of an introvert that after a day of working with who the evening chef is going to be, I am utterly peopled out. I'm done. And so I went down to the canoes and I put a canoe into the water, and I'm going to go out in the middle of the lake, and I'm going to journal, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to watch the sun, and I'm going to hear God, right? And so I look to the rack of life vests, and I say to myself, I'm a trained lifeguard. I failed one test. I couldn't tread water for 2 minutes with the breath over my head. Other than that, I'm like, this awesome lifeguard. And I look at the vest, and I'm like, these are for lesser people. These are not for trained lifeguards. So I leave that aside. And I turn to the right and I look, and there is the oars. And so I put one oar in my canoe, and I think, should I grab a second? A second? I am what? A lifeguard. I need a second oar. So I canoe myself out to the middle of the lake, and then I take my oar and I put it across the canoe. Put it across the canoe, right? And then I turn around to reach for my journal, and as you can imagine, boink, and there it goes. Now, most sane, humble people would go, man, I'm really in a pickle. I'm in the middle of a lake, and I have an oar, and the sun's going down. But I am, in fact, what, Adrian?
You're trained lifeguard.
This close to being a lifeguard, right? I'm a genius. I am built for this moment. So off come the socks, off come the shoes, off comes the shirt. And do I check the temperature of the water in May? I do not. I do not. Turns out they didn't cover canoeing in lifeguard training. And I dive into the water. And in an instant, my energy went from 100% to about 10%. Like, it was that fast. I can't even explain it to you. It was so cold, I cannot explain the pain that hit in that moment, the absolute horror that struck in that moment, right? And so I get myself out to the oar, which is now drifting. It's about 10-15 feet away from the boat. And in that short distance, I grab a hold of the oar, and I look back at the boat. I got 15 feet to cover, and I'm not going to be able to do this one-arm lifeguard stroke with the oar in one hand and make it back. I abandon the oar, and I begin to swim overhand, right, freestyle. I cannot make 15 feet to the boat. I can't. It's gone. So I flip onto my back, and I begin to do the elementary. Remember the elementary backstroke? Did you all remember? Yeah, right. The most energy conserving stroke. And I begin to do the elementary backstroke. And I remember enough of this moment where I would find myself going under, and I wasn't even entirely conscious that I was going under, but some little lizard part of the brain would kick in, and I'd be like, I'd kick to the surface kind of thing, right? And the vision is starting to collapse, and it's going tunneled, and I can't, it's over. It's game over. And then there's a hand, and I remember nothing. until the shoreline, and my knees are ripped up as I am crawling with like no strength on this rocky shore. And it turns out that the year-round chef who actually did run the kitchen, his 10-year-old kids were on the dock and they had seen me out in the middle of the lake. And these two 10-year-olds rowed out to get me, right? I don't know if you've ever had an experience of nearly drowning. It is you, it is water, it is the sky, and that's it. That's it. Jonah is a man that is going down, down, down. He is drowning and he is utterly alone. About 11 years ago when I started teaching at COD, my students started writing papers and they kept saying things about being lonely. And I was never once lonely in college, never. And so I started paying attention to this and I started actually doing research on this. And it turns out we are in the middle of a massive epidemic of loneliness. This, by the way, 2018 Cigna US Survey Loneliness Index. So this is pre-COVID, right? This is before the pandemic. 54% of people saying no one knows you well. They sometimes or always have a sense that no one knows them well. 46% saying they sometimes or always feel left out. 43% say that their relationships lack any meaning. Any meaning. 39% no longer close to a single person. Not one. Last one. 36%, that's 1 out of every 3 of us. There is no one that you can turn to. Right? There is no one you can turn to. In the 1950s, Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a play, 3 people in a room. And originally, they get there and they start conversing with one another, and it's all fine. But as you can imagine, there's no doors. It's a place called no exit. They can't get out. And the more it becomes clear to them that they can't get out, the more they begin to engage and wrestle and kind of mess one another up until, in the end, it famously concludes with this line, hell is other people. Sartre says, hell is other people. Around the same time, C.S. Lewis publishes a book called The Great Divorce. And in The Great Divorce, he imagines somebody arriving in the afterlife. And they're at a bus stop, and everything is gray. It's called Gray Town. There is no color. There is no anything. It's all very drab, all very featureless. And Lewis has this to say, it seems a horrible town, I volunteered. That's what I can understand. The parts of it that I saw were so empty. Was there any once much of a population at all? Not at all, said my neighbor. The trouble is that they're so quarrelsome. As soon as anyone arrives, he settles in some street. And before he's been there for 24 hours, he quarrels with his neighbor. And before the week is over, he's quarreled so badly that he decides to move on. Very likely he feels that the next empty street, because all the people there have quarreled with their neighbors and they have moved. If so, he settles in it. And if by a chance the street is full, he goes further still. But even if he stays, it makes no odds. He's sure to have another quarrel pretty soon, and then he'll move on again. And finally, he'll move right on to the edge of town, and he will build a new house. You see, it's easy there. You only have to think a house, and there it is. And that's how the town keeps growing. Leaving more and more empty streets, I inquire? That's right. Hell, for Lewis, is the exact opposite of what it is for Sartre. It is the exact opposite of what it is in the story of Jonah. Hell is not other people, right? God has called Jonah to go to the other people that he imagines to be unforgivable, unworthy, all the words that we would want to fill in. And in his reaching for his own will into his descent into hell, it leaves him in a place where he is staggeringly alone. Isolation is a feature of hell. It's not a bug in the system. It's a feature of hell. Any of you in this room know anyone who you would say, yes, I know someone who is profoundly lonely and cut off. How many of you know people that you would go, yeah, I know these people, right? And some of you are like, yeah, I was referring to myself. right? Hell is lonely. It is isolated. It is a feature. It's not above. But Jonah ran away from the Lord, and he headed for Tarshish, and he went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port, and after paying the fare, he went aboard, and he sailed to Tarshish to flee from the Lord. There are two kinds of people. Those to whom say, thy will be done, and those to whom God looks and says, thy will be done. One reaches up and aspires to bring heaven to earth. One reaches inward and finds nothing but hell, the loss of all things. You ask yourself, what does this mean for us today? I have spent 11 years pondering why my students are so lonely. It bothers me to the core of my being. It bothers me. And it occurred to me as I was reading Jonah that Jonah's central problem is with other people that he sees to be less than himself. Jonah's central problem is that he doesn't want to follow the will of God. Jonah's central problem is that he wants to do his own thing, and it leaves him in a completely isolated territory. And once I made that jump, I started to ask myself, wait a minute, if isolation is a feature of hell, and we live in a deeply isolated culture, are we in fact in hell? Are we creating a hell on earth? And how does one create hell on earth? Well, it says Jonah fled. He left the will of God. And so I found myself going, well, is it possible that we have in fact left the will of God? Have we not listened to the call that God has put on our lives? And the call may not come in the form of like, dude, I'm not a prophet. Like, he doesn't hang out and like tap me on the shoulder and say, Scott, I need you to go over here. That's not how it works. But that is not to say that the Christian does not have a call on their life. What does the call look like? Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for their righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. There is a call on every single Christian life, and it is a call that looks towards those that suffer, towards the marginalized, towards those that don't have two nickels to rub together, towards the orphans, towards the widow, towards the blind. Name the category, there's a call. And I find myself wondering whether the hell that we are constructing in terms of the raw, abject isolation and desperate loneliness is in fact a symptom of a people who have forgotten what it is to live into the call. Years ago, 98, right before I met my wife, spent 3 years working in social work, sold everything I owned, moved overseas, and I went to live in the red light district of Amsterdam. I worked at a Christian youth hostel. Our neighbors were right in the district. And because we were a Christian hostel, we had a number of rules, not the least of which was we were not allowed to be out after midnight because not a lot of good things happen in Amsterdam after midnight. But in fairness, not a lot of good things happen in Amsterdam pretty much 24 hours a day. And but we weren't supposed to be out and about. But I got permission from my boss that night. I'm like, come on, American sports bar in the district. They are showing the Dallas Cowboys game. And JR and I go down there. It's Cowboys Steelers. They're like, go. So JR was coming from one direction. I was coming from another. And I'm walking down the street, and I start to see this guy. He's probably 15 feet in front of me, and he's shaking a can. And remember, I'm a social worker. I've spent 3 years working with kids who have nothing, right? You would think if anyone is primed to understand this guy, it would be a guy who spent 3 years working with kids who have nothing. But I'm following this guy, and a little dialogue starts to play out in my head, and I'm like, how doesn't he get a job? Why is he walking the street shaking a can? Like, what's he doing? Like, I mean, if there's jobs around, I've seen signs for jobs around. Like, I know it. And as I keep taking every step, the dialogue gets darker and darker. getting grimmer and grimmer. But I'm about 15, 20 feet behind him, and all of a sudden I see a hand come out of the building, and they dump money into his thing, and he nods and moves right on, barely acknowledges it. And I'm like, an idiot. They just put money in his can. What kind of an idiot puts money in the can? Right? And it's just getting darker and darker. They get up to the building, and it turns out there's a very weird neon glow around the window. And standing at the window is the arm that dropped the money in the can. And then face to face with a woman who sells herself every day, many times a day. And the two of us stood there looking at each other for a second. One of us, hardly any clothes at all, stripped naked, bare, exposed. And I assure you, in every meaningful way, I am describing myself, not her. One of us saw the image of God in the other and found money to put in a can. And the means by which she had earned that money were staggering. One of us was there as a missionary. Think about that. One of us was there as a missionary. Right? One of us was following him going, man, if I give money to him, he's going to go buy alcohol. Ask me what I did when I got to the bar to watch the Cowboys-Steelers game. I got myself a fine pint, right? So apparently it's not that he buys alcohol. I object to him buying alcohol with my money, right? That's the deal. One of us was fully and completely exposed. One of us in that moment possessed a morality that was sharp, clear, distinct, that understood that you do not need to know the other, to approve of the other, to be in relationship with the other. You simply need to be able to see the other as one that is worthy of God. Blessed are the weak, the poor, the broken, the shattered, the ones that society lets go of. That's the call. That's the call. Jonah hears the call. And he's like, those people? Not your will, my will. Those people? Isolation, hell. Are we hearing the call? Are we listening to it? When you see the people, we're going to get into this more. I think I'm coming back around like later August, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the next time in the year. We're going to spend our time talking about a really critical question. And my question is this. I'm giving you the heads up now. Who are in your mind the unforgivable people? Who are in your mind the people that are beneath you, that are not worthy of the grace of God? Who are the people that you don't have time for? Who are the people that your little narrative that runs in your head, and we all have them. Like we all have the narrative running, right? I don't know who your people are. You don't know who all my people are, but we all have the people, don't we? We're like, those people, right? Surely if those people, then it would be all better. As soon as you start thinking in terms of those people, the world around you, the relational world gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Until eventually, it is just you in a body of water, drowning, going under, with nothing left to hold on. Two people stood in Amsterdam that day, and they faced one another. One was exposed, and it was me. My question for you this morning is this. Are you exposed? Are you exposed? Do you see the call and you go, but life? Do you see the call and go, but that's not for me. That we got church programs for that. Do you see the call but think, I'm just in for the fire insurance at the end of life. I just want heaven someday. The call is sitting right here, right now, no questions asked. It's to you, it's to me, it's to her, it's to them, it's to everyone in this room. Are we Jonah? Or something different? Have we been exposed? And is that the isolation that we are seeing in this world today? A group of people who no longer see any kind of community offered by a church that makes room for them. That's really it. That's what I got for you this morning. Thanks for sticking with me. I turn this over to, there we go. And I never hit you. Let me get this down.